in so long. Don't worry, I'll be back. Let's see if anybody joins. Impromptu. Should I? Yeah, let's get the microphone plugged in. How about that? How about that? I can. There we go. Hello, hello. They changed the format on this thing. What do you know? Okay. Let's plug you in. Voila. Hopefully it sounds okay. I'll give us to see if anybody joins the live. I hope everyone had a really good weekend. I did. The weather is finally good here. Pollen, not so much. I'm in Virginia right now. The pollen, you might hear it in my voice. The pollen is out of control. Hello, thank you for joining. I just hopped on, so we'll give people a few minutes to come in. Yeah, pollen is out of control, and I made the mistake of going hiking, which it was a beautiful hike, but not the best time to do it. You're in the middle of Georgia? Okay, so essentially, basically, if you're in the middle of Georgia and you have seasonal allergies, you'll die. You'll just die. But what's crazy is I grew up in Georgia, and then I have lived in Virginia on and off for a few years. I never had allergies in Georgia, ever. Never had seasonal allergies, but here in Virginia, they kill me. You can't tell, but my eyes, my makeup smeared. My eyes are two different shapes right now. Every morning I wake up, they're puffy. It's not fun. I'm not allergic to anything. Well, congratulations. Hi from Texas. How's Texas doing? I've been watching, I'm sure you guys have been watching all of these protests that have been happening on college campuses. The University of Texas in Austin was one of the campuses that had some pretty gnarly protests, but they got broken up very quickly, which I was happy to see. Georgia, actually, Emory University also had some protests. It's pretty wild to see, actually. The main one, Columbia, West Texas is good, far away from the protest. I did see that Columbia a few minutes ago, they made an announcement that, so Columbia University is essentially like the epicenter. It's where a lot of this started. And the one where they've been allowed to get out of control. But I did see that they have announced they will not be following the demands of the students. So the students demanded that they divest all money from Israel, and they said, we're not going to be doing that. And they did give them 30 minutes to clean up their tent encampments. So we'll see how that goes, if they actually clear them out. But it was nice to see Texas. It looked like Florida was taking control of things on these campuses. I just saw some images from USC. There is now a Palestinian flag. By the way, I don't know if anyone has ever been on the campus of USC. I believe it's the University of Southern California, USC. Yeah. When I was living in Los Angeles and I was acting there, I used to do a lot of student films for the film students at USC. I loved doing that. It was just a good way to practice, get footage. And you help out the students. So I would go on the USC campus a lot. The campus is immaculate. It is a beautiful, beautiful campus. And the image that they showed today was from, I guess you would call it the quad, like the middle part, and that's where they have their own little autonomous zone, their Summer of Love zone going on. And at the top of one of the buildings, right there in the quad, is a Palestinian flag. It's wild to see because these are some of the most privileged kids in the entire country, the kids that are attending USC. USC is also one of the top 10 most expensive universities to attend in the US. USC is up there. MIT is up there, which was another university where these protests were. Columbia is way up there. Columbia, just to put it into perspective for you about these universities, the median income for the United States, the median annual income is like, it's $54,000. That's the median income for all of the United States. Yearly tuition at Columbia costs $80,000. $80,000. And I found it really interesting this whole time watching all of these protests break out. I was like, why is it only... And if you live in any of these areas next to these schools, for instance, I was just telling you that when I was living in Los Angeles, I was really familiar with USC. I would do student films there. Actually, in Denver, what is it? Is it the University of Colorado? I think. I don't know, but there's a university in downtown Denver. They also have some Summer of Love, Chaz, autonomous zones happening. I also did student films there when I lived in Denver. And then growing up in Atlanta, Emory, you're very familiar with. These are all some of the most elite, some of the most expensive universities. And I find it interesting because you're not seeing these protests break out at the local community college or some random state school. It's all the most expensive, the most elite universities, the most privileged. I say the United States, but you could even argue the most privileged people in the entire world, the most privileged kids in the entire world. And those are the ones that are doing these protests. That should tell you a lot. That right there should tell you a lot. And let me see if I can pull it up, because it actually makes sense too. I really didn't look this up. We're going to do it right now. George Soros funding the protests. Columbia. Okay, so there were a few reports coming out that were saying, hi zombies, a few reports were coming out that were saying that George Soros is behind some of the funding for these protests. Because if you look at them, there's a lot of similarities with them and the George Floyd protests. They seem to be well funded. For instance, I think it was Columbia University. It was one of them. All of the tents were brand new and they were all the same color. So I do think that there are paid agitators that are going into these areas. So this is from the New York Post. No one familiar with the state of modern academia can be much surprised by the wave of anti-Israel tent city occupations sweeping U.S. campuses, but that doesn't make them 100% organic. And the post-discovery that lefty philanthropists are funding student protest leaders may just be the tip of an iceberg. Encampments at Harvard. Yeah, listen to me list off these universities. These are our most elite universities. The luckiest kids, you could argue, in all of the land, in all of the world. Encampments at Harvard, Yale, UC Berkeley, Ohio State, and Emory in Georgia were organized by branches of Students for Justice and Palestine, which gets cash, some direct, some indirect, from the Soros family charities, as well as the Rockefeller Brothers Fund and retired Wall Street banker Felice Gelman. Gelman and the Soroses also gave to Jewish Voice for Peace, and within our lifetime, more groups intimately involved in the protests. At least 3 organizers, Malik Afina, Berkeley, Craig Burkhead Morton, Yale, and Nida Laffey, University of Texas, Dallas, are paid fellows of another lefty philanthropy favorite in the U.S. campaign for Palestinian rights. USCPR Community and College fellows each stipends of $2,800 to $7,800 to work organizing campaigns to demand cutting ties with Israel. So if you remember, that was one of the demands at Columbia. That's one of the demands at a lot of these schools. So they're not just out there camping, whining like giant toddlers. They also have a list of demands. one of the demands they're making these schools is to divest any funding in Israel. So, makes sense. I apologize that I will have to wipe my nose several times throughout this live stream because my allergies are kicking. Though most of the campus occupiers are themselves plenty privileged, oh, you don't say, the charitable giving helps explain why the demonstrators get to protest in style, sleeping in Amazon-ordered tents, enjoying delivery pizza, coffee from Dunkin', free sandwiches from Pret a Manger, I have no idea what that is, organic tortilla chips, and $10 rotisserie chickens. Abby Hoffman, eat your heart out. Campus agitators never had it so good. And again, I need to say it again, it's only the most elite and the most expensive universities where you see these occupations happening. Cash and leadership tips may come from other sources too. At least one expert suspects foreign assistance, funding, and influence based on the similarities of the protests hitting at Passover. So that's an interesting thing that's happening too. These protests started happening right at the beginning of Passover. And students, you have Jewish students, especially at Columbia, where they were not even allowed to enter the autonomous zone. So you have Jewish students right before Passover who are being told you cannot enter these autonomous zones because you are Jewish. Oh my gosh. And there's someone mowing the lawn, so I think there's just stuff just in the air right now, right outside. I apologize if you can hear the lawnmower, by the way. And of course, any progressive protest, especially in a college town or major city, is likely to attract plenty of careerist lefties who hang out near campuses for years or even decades after graduation or dropping out. Some of the non-Trustafarians even have real jobs. What? They have real jobs? That said, the Soros Foundation has a long history of funding left-wing causes, from electing soft-on-crime prosecutors to pushing drug decriminalization. Countless other foundations, like the Rockefeller Brothers Fund, have fallen under far-left leadership over the years. How much of these charities' political work actually qualifies for tax-favored status is something the IRS and the Justice Department ought to be looking into. So there is something, and I suspect a lot of these NGOs, a lot of these charities are in violation. So there's something that you file. It's called a 503C. Is you get tax money, or you also get tax benefits. And if you're a charity, you can get taxpayer money or you get tax benefits. But one of the rules for having that status, which I suspect a lot of them have, is that you can't take a partisan political side, which obviously that's not happening with a lot of these foundations. I actually discovered this too with our open borders. You have a lot of charities, you have a lot of NGOs that have that 503C status, and they are acting directly in line with far leftist partisan policies. They're not supposed to be doing that. Also a shame is that you have students that are not involved in these protests at all. For instance, at Columbia University, the president of the university announced that in-person classes will be canceled for the remainder of the school year. So now kids that have nothing to do with these protests have their classes canceled for the remainder of the school year, and they still have to pay that full tuition. At, what was the other university? Oh, USC, which we were talking about. Again, both of these colleges are in the top 10 of the most expensive universities. You had a girl that is attending USC. So USC, because of these protests, had their graduation canceled. And there was a TikTok video that was going viral, and it was of a USC student, a girl, and she said, you know, my high school graduation was canceled because of COVID. So I wasn't able to have that. We had no in-person high school graduation. And now here I am in college, and I'm like, you know, at least I'll have this experience. And now that's canceled because of these protests. And that's the reality for people her age right now. It really sucks because she had 2 milestones essentially stolen from her for no reason. And in my opinion, the would have shut it down and you wouldn't have this problem. These kids, they're so entitled. I think I made a video about this earlier, and it's not just that. I do think every generation looks at the generation younger than them and they think, oh, we had it so much better. Oh, we were so much better. We were so much more mature. But I really do look at this generation of college kids right now, and there's a level of entitlement, just an overall level of understanding how the world works that just wasn't there when I was in college. We didn't have that level of entitlement. We had respect for authorities and adults. We had fear of adults. We had a healthy fear of getting in trouble. They think that they can do whatever, they can say whatever, and nothing is going to happen to them. There's going to be no consequences. And that's in large part the fault of the adults in their lives, the school administrators, the school staff, their professors that do not hold them accountable for anything. So then when they are held accountable, they're shocked. They don't understand it. Why aren't you meeting my demands? And yes, a lot of these protests, I do believe they are funded by Soros and his foundations. That's nothing new. They've been doing it for a while. And what they'll also do is they'll try to say like, oh, Soros isn't funding them. He might not be directly reaching in his pocket and saying, here you go, this is exactly how I would like you to use my money, but it's his charities and his foundations and his family's foundations that are funding a lot of these things. So they try to use that, but that's really a play on words. He is funding, it just might not be directly, but that's how they can kind of trick you into thinking that he's not. Yeah, and a lot of these protesters are the same exact people that protested for BLM. It's the same exact thing. And they also have no idea what they're protesting. Fear of losing their jobs. Hello, Patsy. It almost seems like they don't even care, like they don't even think about the future. We were too busy. I don't know. We were just having fun in college and learning, which is what you should do. I would be so mad if I was a parent actually paying for my child to go to university and then they had to miss the rest of the school year. And the thing is, you know that it's fake because especially, let's look at USC. Let's look at New York City. None of these kids are upset about the homelessness happening in their cities. None of them are upset about just the overall quality of life that's degrading all around them in the cities that they live in. Yet they are out there protesting for a country that most of them can't even spell probably. And the reason they can't spell is because they're not in class. And over a country that half of them can't even find on a map. Yes, here in London also, I believe it. Hello, Miles. I'm trying to see if there's an update with Colombia because a while ago they were told that they had faces glued to the phones. Yeah. So a while ago it was announced that they had 30 minutes to get out of their encampment. A protester, this is UCLA, excuse me, not USC, UCLA. So this is UCLA. There was a protester in the liberated zone. Oh, it's the liberated zone now. It's not the autonomous zone, it's the liberated zone. With a potentially fatal banana allergy, counter-protesters invaded the encampment, saw the no bananas warnings. The next day, they came back waving bananas, like settlers waving machine guns, and smeared bananas everywhere. So that's how it's going. That's how. Should I read that again? There was a protest in the liberated zone at UCLA with a potentially fatal banana allergy. Counter protesters invaded the encampment and saw the no bananas warning. The next day, they came back waving bananas like settlers waving machine guns and smeared bananas everywhere. So that's how it's going. And you can't see it, but I am watching a video of a woman eating and waving around a banana at the protesters. So there's that. There's that, friends. There is, so Sheryl Sandberg, she's the CEO of Meta Facebook. She actually released an hour-long documentary. It's free. You can find it here on YouTube. It's called Screams Before Silence. And she goes to Israel and she interviews a lot of people that went through the attack on October 7th. And it's pretty powerful. It's hard to watch. It's important to watch. And if you want to know, I watched it on Saturday night. And if you want to know where the title of that comes from, Screams Before Silence, it essentially comes from, I heard this a while back. I think it's a really good title of a documentary. It came from, so a lot of people were hiding in the bush and brush at the Nova Music Festival on October 7th to get away from the terrorists. And they were hiding in these bushes, this brush, for hours and hours. And unfortunately, they heard a lot of people being killed. They heard a lot of the attacks. And they would describe it as you would hear one person continuously screaming, and you would recognize that one voice. And then all of a sudden, they would stop screaming, just all of a sudden. And that would unfortunately indicate that they were gone, that they had just been killed. So that's what the name of the documentary is. I think it's really good to watch, and it's really shocking. It still shocks me. I don't know if anyone saw this interview with Susan Sarandon. It was essentially just a street interview, and she was denying a lot of the things that happened on October 7th, and I've seen this time and time again. It's wild how many people out there will completely deny a lot of the atrocities that happened. It's wild, and it's on video. The reason we know it isn't just the physical evidence. It's not just witness or firsthand accounts. It was actually filmed and live streamed by themselves on their GoPros. They were proud of themselves. They were bragging about it. In fact, the reason they were so joyful is because I don't think they realized that they were going to be as successful as they were. I don't think they realized they were going to get in there and they were going to be able to cause as tragedy as they were. So I think that's one of the reasons they just couldn't help themselves. They were bragging so much, but still the amount of people that will deny a lot of what happened, it's on video and there's evidence. But I've heard it several times. I heard it by Susan Sarandon. I was watching Piers Morgan. He's been having a lot of really good debates that I've been watching. And it shouldn't be forgotten that on October 8th, I was in New York City. Because I think it's one thing to be you can be pro people of Palestine, not necessarily pro-Israel, but you can still call out things that are wrong. You can still condemn the attacks that happened on October 7th. You can still condemn Hamas and terrorist groups. And I think that's what's really hurting their movement is I've seen it go exactly, pro-peace. Pro-peace. You can be pro-peace and still be, I don't like anyone getting hurt. I don't like war, period. But that's not what's happening. They seem to be pro-terror, which is really disturbing. And it shouldn't be mixed up. I think it is getting a little muddy because I think it happened so long ago that we're forgetting, but we shouldn't forget that on October 8th, before Israel even responded People were in Times Square in New York City and on some of these college campuses celebrating. What were they celebrating? They were celebrating the murder of a lot of innocent people. They were celebrating the terrorists, and that should not be forgotten. And I think a lot of these students are forgetting that that happened. And that was way before Israel even responded, people were celebrating. And again, you can even, and I even understand, and I'm almost there too. I even understand the point of, let's stop funding Israel. Okay, let's stop funding all the wars. I'm down with not funding any foreign war. I'm down with that. I get that, but that's not all they're saying. A lot of these students just follow the hype. Oh, you're very much right. A lot of them, and I've watched, if you do, it's rather funny, but if you watch a lot of the interviews with them where they're being asked questions, they can't answer the questions. They're brain dead. There was a funny video. I don't know if you guys know who Gavin McGinnis is. He's a commentator. He's really funny. And he actually infiltrated one of the encampments and went in and pretended to be one of the pro-Palestinian protesters, and he was answering questions. See if I can pull it up. I don't know where it is right now. And you have to ask yourself too, why aren't people in the Middle East protesting? Maybe they are. I don't know. I haven't seen any of it. Are people in the Middle East protesting for Palestine? I'm just curious. Maybe they are. I have no idea. FOMO for a lot of the students. I've noticed a lot of them have a very similar haircut, and I don't even know what to call it. It's like, it's curly and it's bangs, and then it kind of goes down, and it's like, not necessarily, it's not a mullet, it's not a full-on mullet. I don't know what it is, but I've noticed a lot of young women with that haircut, and it's not flattering. I don't know why you would do that to yourself. Hear the Hunter Got High song? Yeah, it's funny. They, who said that? Miles? So they released Afro Man. He is a rapper from back in the day. I guess he still makes music. I don't know. But he had that song. I was gonna go to class and then I got high. I would have studied, I would have passed, but then I got high. Da da da. And he made a song, he remade it and re-released it, but he replaced it with Hunter Got High, Hunter Biden. So you should go pursue that somewhere and listen to it. I would play it, but I get a copyright ding if I play anything, even on a live stream. Oh, yay, George has a paid day off. I'm glad you have a paid day off. That sounds awesome. There's nothing better than a paid day off. And the thing is, too, okay, here, let me see if I can play this for you. So, the similarities between the pro-Palestinians and BLM was always there. Here is, let me see if I can find her. Here's Patrice Concolors. You're going to hear the audio.
I also think that it might, I think of a lot of things. The first thing I think is that we actually do have an ideological frame. Myself and Alicia in particular are trained organizers. We are trained Marxists. We are super versed on sort of ideological theories. And I think that what we really try to do is build a movement that could be.
Hold on, there's another one where she talks about divesting. Okay. That's Patrice Concolors. She's one of the co-founders of BLM.
The Black Lives Matter theme, and also talk about the strategy. You mentioned you had come out of the Strategy Center. What was the Strategy Center?
Well, I'm a trained organizer, and so I think sometimes people think that because Black Lives Matter is the biggest thing, that's the first thing I ever did, and it's not. I was trained knocking on doors, getting on buses and passing out flyers and getting people to join organizations. The Labor Community Strategy Center is my first political home. It's where I would be a part of what it's famous for, which is the Bus Riders Union.
Started by an old friend of mine.
Yes, Eric Mann, that's my mentor.
And that hashtag Black Lives.
Did she talk about Israel in that clip? So I am going to, you heard her talk about the Strategy Center. This is important because, again, BLM and what you're seeing with the pro-Palestinian protests, they all sort of go into they're all the same thing. And she mentioned the Strategy Center. So the Strategy Center is where she trained at. Like she said, she's a trained organizer. The guy who runs the Strategy Center, his name is Eric Mann. And this is him talking about his tactics. Or here's a part of him. But this is talking, by the way, Eric Mann is a white man, and he is said to be the puppet master behind BLM. So it's never about what it seems like on the purpose. There's always somebody behind the scenes pulling the strings. There's always some organization, and it all goes back to communism, Marxism, like just all this stuff. But here he is.
Based on guerrilla warfare principles, which is you're up against a far more powerful enemy. And you have a very small little army, and you're trying to figure out with this little army that maybe at best is like a flea bite. How do you kill an elephant with flea bites?
We start with the intersection of the Black and Latino community as a strategic alliance that's central to building a broader multiracial left.
This is the father of Black Lives Matter.
The Black trans women who have been murdered.
To the extent that Black people are involved, these are useful idiots. These are people who are fronts to carry out the agenda of white Marxists.
If we don't have a base in the Black and Latino community, we can't branch out. You got to have a strategy, and that's at least my strategy. We don't believe that majority white organizations can be transformative organizations.
Black Lives Matter? It's a white-run organization.
And I think what you're seeing with a lot of the pro-Palestinian is it's essentially two ideological groups that are, I guess they have a similar goal right now, and that's chaos. So you have like groups like this that are more that have more of a communist agenda, and then you have, a pro-Hamas group that has obviously more of a, I don't know, Sharia law agenda, I guess you could say. But they both have similar goals right now. They can both use each other. They're beneficial to each. It's a mutually beneficial relationship at the moment. Okay, this is Eric Mann again. This is really interesting because he's talking about another tactic that he uses, and this is going to be very, very familiar to you. So this is Eric Mann, the man that they say is the puppet master behind BLM.
One of my lessons, spoiler alert, is whoever wins the terms of debate eventually wins the politics. So when we started telling the school board, stop military racism, it actually influenced the chief of police in LA that I'll tell you about. This is a fast forward. But they called the gym Jim Crow. G-Y-M, Crow, right? So as soon as they called the gym Jim Crow, in my opinion, that was the end. You won. Because who wants to say, no, we must keep Jim Crow, right? So you see, and then it's not called Jim Crow. Well, as I tell people, Coca-Cola doesn't care. If you say, I don't like Coca-Cola, I hate Coca-Cola, they say, just keep saying it. So the more you say, I don't like Jim Crow, don't call it Jim Crow, that Jim was dead. But it's not that easy. So first you win the battle of ideas, right? But now you have to win the actual power struggle. Think about the brilliance of rhetoric that was used during the 60s and how much we give all these young people say, hey, I invented the spoken word. Let me break it to you. We knew the spoken word. What an incredible...
So he essentially, he's talking about how they use words and labels. And if you think about the name Black Lives Matter, they won. As soon as you called that organization Black Lives Matter, you won. Because if you're against Black Lives Matter, what? You don't think, who wants to be against Black Lives Matter? So you see what he did there? They won. And it worked. It was very effective. They do the same thing with Donald Trump. Donald Trump is a white supremacist. Donald Trump is a white supremacist. They say it so many times that it gets into people's heads. You see your friend maybe that you hadn't seen in months. It's around election time. And your friend is like, so, who are you voting for? And you go, Donald Trump. And they think, oh, what? But Donald Trump is a white supremacist. How could you vote for that? They do that constantly. It's very effective and it works. That's why he uses it. That's why they use it. Because it works. It's very effective. It was funny. There was this podcast interview. It was a clip from a podcast interview that was going around. And it was this girl, probably in her early 20s. I guess she's an influencer on TikTok. And we all do this. It's not a shocker. But she was talking about how members of the Biden administration were reaching out to her and wanted to pay her for pushing Biden propaganda, for making Biden propaganda videos on TikTok. Which, that's ironic for, we'll get into that in a second. That's ironic coming from the administration that's trying to force TikTok to sell, otherwise ban it, but that's what it is. Anyway, she was saying how weird it was because I think she was either Hispanic or mixed race. How weird it was because she had this white woman from the Biden administration calling her, telling her to use her race to promote Joe Biden. And she thought to herself, no, I'm not doing that. Kudos for her for saying no and also for talking about it publicly. But she was like, it was so weird to sit there on the phone. And I can only imagine it would be like almost even worse, like a man calling me, trying to get me to chill for women's rights. Like, what are you doing being a man calling me? So I'm sure the irony of having a white member of the Biden administration have you come and use your race to try to push Biden propaganda. The irony, though,
because we couldn't afford housing anymore. What blows?
I'm going to play this for you in a minute. I find this really interesting. The irony, though, is that the Biden administration is essentially using TikTok creators to pay them to try to push propaganda while at the same time trying to force it to sell. And if you noticed the TikTok ban bill, it's really funny. The timing on it changed. So when it was first introduced, they were giving TikTok 6 months to to sell before it would be banned in the US. When it finally got passed, they switched it to 9 to 12 months, conveniently pushing it back a few months. Because what's happening in about 6 months? The election. Who's Joe Biden's base? 18 to 25-year-olds. Who uses TikTok the most? 18 to 25-year-olds. Who also makes the most money? 18 to 25-year-olds on TikTok. So it's just, I think they pushed it back as to wait until conveniently after the election. This is a woman, and a lot of people, what really annoys me about a lot of conservatives is they have such a black and white view of TikTok. There's a lot of in between. There's a lot of small businesses, single moms, people that make extra income. It's actually getting them through this crazy inflation. So I want you to hear this woman, because I also don't think it's helpful when conservatives are like, TikTok is bad. Just because I follow Libs of TikTok and she posts videos that she finds, I think all of TikTok is bad. It is nothing more than a medium, just like YouTube, just like any other social media medium. I think we all know it's not about China and our data. So I think it's about control. But anyway. And it's kind of a litmus test too. You can tell who the real small government Republicans are, whether they're for or against this.
Blows my mind is that. So what has America done for us lately? Let me show you. Y'all see this RV? That's where we live. Not because we wanted to, because we couldn't afford housing anymore. What blows my mind is they are so swift to try to ban an app that has actually allowed normal middle-class people to gain some financial traction, where instead of living check to check, we now can have money to put back to get us a house. Literally, so many people are so out of touch with what TikTok actually is. Because this isn't a silly little app where we watch dances. There are small businesses that survive based off of this app. There are people who are just your normal everyday people like myself, who have been a stay-at-home mom who's finally able to do something where I post videos and make money off of that, or I promote products from TikTok Shop where I can actually bring in a significant amount of money to help provide for my family. I work my butt off doing it. But everyone sees it as just a silly little app. You are so out of touch. So is our Congress. So is all of our government. They have one track mind, and that's to control.
Exactly. And this is when I listen to conservatives talk about this, again, when they have such a black and white view of what it is. Like, there's so many people like this woman who are able to earn not even a lot of money, just a little bit of money on TikTok. And we're actually able to get a little bit of traction where otherwise they wouldn't have been able to get a little bit of financial traction.
Everybody. They obviously don't give a.
So, yeah. So whenever I hear, especially like, and I hate to bring them up, like a Ben Shapiro or somebody talk about TikTok, I'm like, you are so out of touch.
Crap about its security. I don't understand how so many people buy into that lie. If they cared about our national security, if they cared about our data, then we wouldn't have Facebook, we wouldn't have Instagram, we wouldn't have open borders. It's amazing that they can decide something so quickly and get it pushed through on an app that will affect millions of people's income, because who is this actually going to help and who is this actually going to hurt? It's helping nobody but them, Republicans and Democrats, because they want to control the narrative. So explain to me how my family looked at this year as being so close to being able to get out of an RV and into a house. And as soon as we start to gain a little bit of financial traction, y'all want to shut it down? House of Representatives? Who are you representing other than yourself? Because it ain't me. It's the millions of other Americans that rely on this app for a secondary income. Why don't y'all fix the crap show you've created here in America where no one can...
She's right. I feel bad for people like her, and she's absolutely right. And it's so obvious to so many people, especially when you have them talking about our safety. It's for your safety. Why is our border? Do you realize that they took our air marshals away? Are they still gone? They took our air marshals away to go after MAGA grandmas. Meanwhile, in San Diego, this just broke, illegal immigrants have a separate TSA line because they don't have IDs. Yet we're supposed to believe that they care about our safety? Laken Riley, a college girl, was out for a run in Athens, a safe area, her college campus where she runs all the time, and was bludgeoned to death from the open borders. Polk County, Florida. Polk County, Florida. This was just posted like 2 days ago. Recently had the largest fentanyl seizure in the history of their state. And it seems like every time they do a trafficking bust, every time they do a seizure like that, it's the biggest one in history. Half of the people they arrested were here illegally under the Biden administration. All of that fentanyl, by the way, since 2018, 250,000 Americans have been killed by fentanyl, and we know it's coming over our border. Has anything been done about that? Nope. I heard, oh my gosh, I was watching, it made my blood boil. I got so angry. I was watching it was a budget hearing, a Homeland Security budget hearing with Secretary Mayorkas. And typically before these hearings, you'll hear like the Democrats and the senators that are there doing the questioning. They'll have a few minutes to give a spiel. And it's always very performative. It never actually means anything. But one of the senators, one of the senators had the nerve to actually, no, two of them, actually, I don't remember, was it Congress or Senate? I don't remember. But two of them had the nerve to bring up, it was a budget meeting, so that's why they were bringing it up, but I don't know why they were bringing it up in this specific budget meeting. But they were talking about how two of them, and they do this, they'll get together, they have sort of the same talking points. They were talking about how constituents in their districts, people that they represent, are calling them and complaining about the price of childcare. Like, it's really expensive, they can't afford it anymore. And so they're sitting there in this budget hearing, and we're talking about this just disastrous open border. And they're complaining about how, their constituents can't afford childcare. And I agree, that's a horrible thing that, it's 2020, it was 2023 at this time. And there are people that are struggling to afford childcare. But the only thing I could think of is I would be curious to know if those same constituents that are complaining to you about childcare, if they know that they are actually paying for the childcare of people that just broke into their country. Actually, no. Yeah. Not only, hold on, let me back up. People that just broke into this country are getting free childcare. And yes, that is happening. Chicago, it's happening. New York, it's happening. So people that just broke into our country are getting free childcare. Pregnant women are having babies here, having them for free, and then getting free childcare, free diapers, free everything. Not only are they getting it for free, not only did they break the law to get into your country, you're paying for it. Isn't that funny? Not only are they getting it for free, you're struggling to afford it yourself, and you're paying for them to get it for free. The people that broke into your country and are breaking the law. And by the way, all of those anchor babies, there's been a lot of births that have been happening in these shelters, and all of those are now anchor babies, and they are permanent residents of the United States of America. So yay.
So what has America done for us lately?
Sorry, that was that video again. It's okay to cry, Sarah, for our nation. I just could not believe the audacity. That is so insulting. And then what else they try to do is they try to say, we are a nation of immigrants. We are a nation of immigrants. We need to do our part. We're all a nation. No, the immigration that our great grandparents did is very different than the immigration that it is not the same. It is not the same. My great grandfather had to pass a health screening. He had to have a job prospect. He had to have a sponsor. And there was something major that did not exist back then that exists now. That is called the welfare state. When our great grandparents came here through Ellis Island, there was no welfare state. Taxpayers were not giving them a free ride. They had to make it on their own. And if they didn't, tough luck. Now, I'm not even joking. I don't know if you guys saw this ridiculous hearing that happened the other week in New York City. It was a hearing specifically for African migrants and their experience being in New York City. I could not believe what I was hearing. You had, and by the way, they're living in free shelters. You had one woman complaining because the food wasn't good in the shelter. It wasn't good enough for her. She was also complaining that she could only stay in the shelter for 2 months for free, and then she had to figure it out on her own. There was another woman that got up and complained and said where she was from in Africa, people spoke 500 languages. That's what you also have to understand about the African migrants. Most of them speak French. They don't speak Spanish. They speak French. How many people do you know that speak French? You can name people that speak Spanish. How many can you name that actually speak French? So this one woman was complaining that nobody understands. She said, where I'm from, there are 500 languages and nobody understands my language. You have some, not only do they speak a language that almost no one understands, they're illiterate. They can't read or write even in their own language. And they're complaining. They're in New York City and they're complaining that New York is not doing enough. What were they thinking? Anyway, this hearing went on for about 6 hours. You had about 1,000 African migrants that showed up, obviously most of whom couldn't get in. I think someone gave them the false impression that if they went to this hearing, they were going to be given work permits. They were handing them out at this hearing. I don't know. But the only person who had even a little bit of sense was Vicky Palladino. She's a councilwoman in New York City. And this is what she said after hearing all of these people complain.
To come here thinking this, but I'd like to say this. In listening to everybody speak and making demands on New York City to do more.
Oops.
How much more are we supposed to do? How much more are we capable of doing? This system is so overworked and overburdened. We don't have the resources that you need to get what you need. I mean, your testimonies move me tremendously. I don't want to see anybody mistreated in any sort of way. But I have to ask you, what motivated you to come here thinking the streets are paved with gold? They're not. They're absolutely not. And you're living through that. Now, we've watched many different people come across this border. The people who have come across this border have come across this border illegally.
Councilmember Palladino,
Yes.
Do you have a question for the panel?
I do.
Because we have to move on. Everyone, we asked a quorum in the chamber. Now, Councilmember Palladino, if you have a question, please present it. If not, we will move on to the next.
So if you heard sort of at the end there, people started to get angry at what she was saying. What did she say that was bad? And you have to ask, why is that offensive to ask the question, what did you expect when you came here? What did you expect was going to happen? And she's absolutely right. She didn't say anything offensive there. She's saying reality. But we live in this politically correct world where you can't hurt anyone's feelings. So instead, we will allow people to be in horrible living situations. We will let them live here because we don't want to hurt their feelings. So we'll just hurt their health. We'll hurt their dignity, their quality of life, but we don't want to hurt their feelings. We need to be politically correct. She didn't say anything wrong. Somebody should have said that to them before they came here. What do you think? What are your expectations? The problem is these people are being used. They're being exploited. They're being promised things that in reality are not going to be able to be fulfilled. And they're living the manifestation of that. That's exactly what Vicky said. You came here expecting that our streets are just lined with gold, and they're not. There's so many of you. What do you expect? We're overburdened. We're overrun. Look at how many of you are here. How many language interpreters are we supposed to have? How long are we supposed to financially take care of you? And even I mean, some of these contracts in New York are going until 2025. We have just imported a permanent welfare class. Who's paying for it? I'm starting to think, it's crazy because the long running, it's not really so much a theory anymore, but, people have tried to figure out why is this happening? Obviously, for different people, there's different incentives. I think for a lot of these NGOs, it's ideologically incentivized. I think they're financially incentivized. There's a lot of people making a lot of money, a lot of migrant millionaires happening. But why would an administration do this to its own people? Well, we've always thought, obviously, they're trying to fill their voting rolls. They're trying to get those census numbers up. And I still believe that. But also another part of me is thinking but you would at least think they would say now, okay, enough is enough. I think we got enough people in. We can chill out now. It's so overburdened. It's so ridiculous. Now, you want to know what I'm thinking? And the reason I think this, so I heard sort of a little report from an inside source, which again, I don't know if I believe, because I personally believe that they're still going to do everything possibly in their power to make sure Trump never gets near the White House. But that being said, I saw a report, I can't remember the publication, but it said that an inside source with the Biden administration has disclosed that they're starting to prepare for a transfer of power. If that's true, then I would also believe that one of the reasons they're getting as many people in as quickly as they can is because they want to make it absolute hell for Donald Trump. They want to give him, and if he does do a mass deportation, which I don't know if Americans can stomach that. We can't even say mean things to people. So I don't know if we can stomach that. And I think they know that. And they want that to be on Trump's hands. I don't know. I wouldn't put it past them. Just to give Trump the biggest absolute mess they possibly can. So they can use it to demonize him even more. And to give him a headache. And to punish anyone and everyone that voted for him. I don't know. That could be a possibility. My phone is dying. So, there's that. All right, my phone is actually dying, so I have to go. But thank you guys so much for watching. I'll be doing a lot more live streams now, so I'm excited to be back. Hopefully, thank you very much. Hopefully, everyone had a really good weekend. I wanted to do a little impromptu live to get back into the swing of doing lives. I'll be back tomorrow. I'm not sure what time though, but I'll let you know what time I'll be back tomorrow. I'm trying to figure out a good solid time to do lives. I can't plug it in right now because it's not close to a plug. And I don't know where my charger is. That's not good. All right. Thank you. All right, you all. Thank you very much. And I will see you later. Bye. How do I turn this one off? Oh, they changed the format on this.